Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Something Something podcast. My name is Eric Kasloff, and with me, as always, is Larry Sands. How's it going, Larry?
Actually, Eric, I'm super excited.
Yeah, so am I. We have a huge guest on, but
Yes.
to keep our banter thing really quick,
Yes.
man, was it a weird Sunday to be a fan of New York sports teams?
Oh man, I tell you
I
what.
mean, I'll admit I've been a Giants fan my whole life, even when I was living in LA, because we didn't have a football team then. I've
Right.
always rooted for my home teams. Well, I did convert to a Lakers fan,
Right.
but Larry, after the Cowboys destroyed the Giants, I was like,
Man.
you know what? I'm gonna convert to a Bills fan for the first time in my life.
And then
And man, thoughts and prayers to Aaron Rodgers. I
yeah,
mean, oh,
yeah, yeah.
Let's not forget the Browns did win. I know that's not
Oh,
in your region, but that's all that matters to me is the Browns won.
you know
that's
what? We're
right.
we're gonna get
That's
right
right.
into our guest, Larry. And I was shocked what happened to the Bengals. So, Larry, let me ask you a question. Do
Yes.
you remember at all where you were October 21st, 1988?
Absolutely not.
I remember where I was. I was about 8 years old. And remember, this was the 80s, so doing stuff like this was normal. My mom and dad and uncles took me to see a movie called Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Wow.
And even
Yes.
as a
Yes.
little kid at the time, I was like, I hated Halloween 3 because Michael Myers wasn't in it. And when I left the theater that day, there was two things I was sure of. One day I'm going to make horror movies and possibly marry Danielle Harris. Sadly, only one of those
Well,
things happened.
one out of two ain't bad.
One out of two ain't bad. We have someone on the show today that when you look through his IMDb,
Oh,
your
yeah.
jaw just drops. I mean, another story. As you know, I had to have a lot of leg surgeries as a kid because of my NF. The night before one of my surgeries, when we were in Delaware, my dad would always take me to the movies. And one of the movies we saw was Marked for Dead with Steven Seagal. So we have a legend in the horror
Yes.
industry. And I just saw his new movie last weekend, Natty Knox.
Oh,
We
nice.
have Dwight H. Little. Mr. Little, Dwight, it is an honor to have you on the show today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks for checking in with me. I appreciate it.
Oh,
I
so where
go ahead, Eric. And
I'm not
okay,
sure where to
I
begin. So
I've
Larry,
got
take over for a
look,
minute.
this I have to admit, Dwight, I have never in my life, well, no, with the exception of a couple of guests, never this nervous
Oh my
to
God.
talk and to do an
Larry, you've
interview.
known me for over 20 years. You've never seen me this nervous.
Yeah,
No.
guys, and don't let me down, guys. Come on now.
Oh no. Oh, believe me, we may be nervous, but we have okay, so by trade, we're a creative podcast, right? We talk to actors and filmmakers and people who want a real taste of what it's like to be in the industry, right? Eric and I, we met in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. I did the acting thing and I did that grind for about 10 years. And I was like, holy crap. Then I went to
That's a
filmmaking.
grind. That is a
Oh
grind.
man, that is ooh, yeah. And so, flash forward, we started to our little podcast talking about what we love, which is filmmaking and acting and being creative. And it's where it is today, which is absolutely amazing. And I like to think that when we talk to any creative type, right? We give everybody out there listening in middle America, in the middle of nowhere, who has a dream about following their passion, about being fill in the blank creative, right? So then we have you on, Dwight, and you really are. And actually, before we started to record, Eric and I were talking, even before we got you on, is you really are a working man's actor or a director
Right.
and filmmaker.
I
Right.
like that. I like it. That's true. And I like that description.
Yeah, yeah. And feel free to use that, please. But,
So I guess let's start. Where did it all start for you?
yeah.
Where did the love of, movies begin?
Well, I got to tell you, it's kind of an interesting story, but I got a Super 8 camera on a Christmas morning. They were little Instamatic, little Kodak
Yeah.
Super 8 cameras. You put a 50-foot cartridge into it. And I had been showing some interest in that, and my parents got me one for Christmas. I just started to shoot everything. The film was expensive, so you had to be very, very careful. And the best part of the whole thing is you would take the cartridge. You guys probably don't remember this, but you take the cartridge out and you take it to the photo store, and they would send it to the lab. And then 2 or 3 days later, you would get the little spool of film back, and you'd put it in your Super 8 projector and project it on the wall of your bedroom.
Wow.
And whatever you shot, the dog, the car, your brother, whatever you shot just wildly, suddenly you're projecting it on the wall of your bedroom and it's something else. And I remember just thinking, this is reality, but way better. It looks better. It's shorter. You can cut all the boring parts out. And it was just from the very beginning, to me, it was a magic trick. And so then I just ran with that ball through 8th grade, 9th grade, Super 8 films, get my friends, little, I don't know, little war stories. We did like a drug gangster story. We did a PTSD back from, Vietnam was like, that's all we thought about. I mean, I was too young to be in it, but I mean, it was so pervasive.
The impact.
So anyway, once I got that, then I grew in high school, got into some local film festivals. Eventually I got a grant from the Ohio Arts Council to do a documentary, and I just grew with it and grew with it. And I applied to a bunch of film schools, didn't get into any of them. And then I applied waitlist to USC, and I got into USC at the last minute. And that was like a miracle, because even then it was starting to get competitive, because Lucas was coming out of there, and Milius and Carpenter right ahead of me, 10 years ahead of me. There was a wave. It was
film
Carpenter.
school brats, right?
Yeah, and it was all those guys. Carpenter, we mentioned, Randall Kleiser, and they were making their way into the business. And suddenly it was like, wait a minute, there's some window. So once I got to USC, then I was able, because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any relatives. I didn't know anybody. So I just started to build from there. So I hope that's not too long a story, but it started early with me.
That's amazing. That, I mean, just hearing you talk about your story, and I think this is the one thing about like filmmaking and things in general and storytelling, is your story makes me think about my story, and everybody's listening to this is thinking about, man, like all I got to do is just live my passion and just pick up a camera and just start doing stuff.
Right, just doing stuff.
Yeah.
That's so, it's almost like it's so weird because it's so easy, but it's such a foreign concept, because I think everybody wants to be in Hollywood, right?
Well,
Everybody
the thing is,
wants to
the technology, of course, is blown up 80 ways from Sunday.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, my son, I had a Super 8 Instamatic, and he has a Black Magic Ursa something 4K. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's a magnificent machine.
Yeah.
He cuts his films on something pro on his computer, right? I was like, kind of going through the film, chopping it and taping it together.
Yeah.
And he's adding sound effects from a library. I mean, so that's all changed. But story, character, acting, none of that's changed. That's the same. But man, there are some great pieces of equipment out there for young filmmakers.
It's
Yeah.
like right now, with your laptop, you can write your movie in Final Draft, shoot it, edit it on Premiere Pro, then make your poster, in Photoshop.
Right,
Right.
right.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the weird thing is, your phone, and this is the one thing that the phones have become so user friendly, right? For camera people, technically. But Eric, you're absolutely right. And Dwight, what was that like? Because obviously, when you started, that was cutting actual film
Oh yeah.
and pasting it and taping it, and and you say doing a library of sound. You guys did your own sound, the Foley artists, right?
And recorded it. Just as a funny aside, there was one picture I did. It was Free Willy 2, the second Free Willy movie at Warner Brothers. And that was just historically the last film edited on film at Warner Brothers. And we, even on that film, we were still on a flatbed. We had moviolas. We cut that on film, but that was the end of it. So that was probably about 95.
Wow.
After that, everything was digital. But that's how long, all through film school, it was 16 millimeter. Out of film school, it was still film. And then finally, it really just switched over. And we were shooting film cameras on The Practice, on Prison Break, and some of those TV shows. We were still shooting film until by about 2010, when the Alexa came in, everybody finally had switched over.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Oh
So
man.
let's start with the first one, your first big feature, the KGB, The Secret War. How did that come about?
Well, that's a pretty crazy story. And I do want to just reference that a lot of the good stuff is in the book, which we'll get to, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that story was very good because there was a famous independent B movie producer at that time named Sandy Howard. Now, there was a lot of these guys around Hollywood. They aren't there today, but there were Sam Markoff and Roger Corman and Sandy Howard, and they made B movies for drive-ins and foreign theaters. And he had made the third Man Called Horse movie. So there was Man Called Horse, which was successful with Richard Harris. Return of a Man Called Horse, which was less successful, but enough. They made a third one. Anyway, he had 82 minutes because the director screwed up and he had 82 minutes. He needed to deliver 90 minutes to get his foreign pre-sale money. So he's 8 minutes short. He has no money. So he calls around and he saw a little article that had been written about my student film. His office calls me in and asks if I would take a job giving Sandy Howard 8 minutes of film for $5,000. It's a crazy story.
Wow. Is it in the book?
Yeah, this story is very detailed in the book. The trick is that we took Michael Beck, the actor who we didn't have. So we put a double on the horse. We rode a horse from right to left for 4 minutes from Boston to Arizona. And then we turned him around, and at the end of the movie, he rode left to right back to Boston.
180 rule, what's that?
What's that?
The 180 rule, what's that?
Yeah, and so he went east to west and west to east, and we had sticks, we had an airy camera, we had a station wagon, and we went out to Sedona, Arizona, and shot all this stuff on film. And it was crazy because Sandy had a pop song by Rita Coolidge that he had bought for another movie and never used. So it was all cut to this Rita Coolidge song, which he owned. And then at the end of the movie, he goes back. So he cuts all this together. Now he's got 8 more minutes of film. It's all the titles are running. Longest title sequence you've ever seen in your life. But he didn't care, so he delivers it. And suddenly Denmark and Belgium and Italy, they're all having to pay him his money. So anyway, it is a crazy story. But then he was so impressed with what we did for him that he said, what do you want to do? You want to make a movie for me? because the problem was that VHS was just coming in, right?
Yeah.
And they needed to make movies cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But there was Vestron, there was there's so many video companies. They needed
American Empire was just starting around then, which later became Full Moon, all that stuff.
all that stuff.
Trauma was blowing up about then.
Which one?
Trauma, Lloyd Kaufman.
Trauma. But there was, New Image, New World,
That's what
Vestron,
I meant. New World, not Empire. New World was the precursor to Full Moon.
Trimark, all these
Yeah.
funny little companies. And I mean, the big one was Canon, of course. But
Oh my, yeah.
I mean, they were at one time they were doing 52 movies a year, and I knew Menachem pretty well. But
Really?
But the point is that we were able to use that little audition for Sandy Howard, and I pitched him a spy movie called KGB: The Secret War, which I stole from myself because I had done a documentary about spies in LA for KBC television. So I had all this knowledge in my head, and I pitched him this movie, and he said, "Let's go make it." So we got Sally Kellerman and Michael and Sarah and Walter Gotell, this funny group of old character actors. Shot it in 20 days, and that was a start, at least.
Wow. And so okay, so let's talk about your book, because I have a feeling, and I was reading some of the press stuff that your publicist sent over. And Still Rolling is your book, the inside the Hollywood Dream Factory.
Right.
It sounds, and I can only imagine that some of the stories that you have, you probably can't really talk about them for fear that somebody may hear this and go, "What, you really feel like that with me?" But somehow it's different when you read it, right?
First of all, there's gossip in the book. I mean, there's a lot of movie star shit in the book.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
there's that little teaser.
Yeah.
But there's also, here it's right here. But there's also a lot of behind the scenes stuff. There it is, Still Rolling.
I love
Awesome.
it. Oh my God.
But there's
Hold it up again so I can get a still of that when I edit this.
Yeah.
Okay, how's that? Can you see it all right?
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So there's not only is there how to shoot, the main thrust is there's the job of making movies,
Right.
in these studios, whatever. That's a job. Then there's the job of making television. And you're called the director on both jobs, but they're different jobs.
Right.
And I'm one of the few guys, I believe, who's written down the differences between these two jobs, because I was 15 years hardcore features, Warner's, Fox, Columbia, blah 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 blah, and then I was 20 years straight up network shows, from 24 to Nikita, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., all that stuff.
Yeah.
So because I had lived in both worlds, I really try and let people know that this is a different job, and I don't think anybody's quite done it before, which makes the book, I hope, interesting.
That's interesting because most people don't get that. With a feature, the director's kind of the guy, but with TV, you're more of a
facilitator.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because it's the showrunner who controls everything when it comes to that.
That's right, and it's very collaborative. Television is much more collaborative.
Yeah.
And in film, you're the monarch.
Yeah.
And that's how. But I mean, obviously, the skill sets are similar.
Yeah.
But the politics are extremely different.
Now I'm looking at your website, and it's links are in the description, but you've worked with, I would say, because I grew up in the 80s, and looking at all these things, even in the 90s. I mean, we have Brandon Lee, we have
an epic human being, by the way.
We were just saying how we wish we lived in the alternative universe where he doesn't die, because he would have been pretty much Keanu Reeves, I feel. All the parts Keanu had, Brandon Lee would have had.
But also, he would have been in every Marvel DC movie
Oh
ever.
my gosh, yeah, he
right.
would have been. He would have made Iron Fist good.
No, he would have been in all those movies, but he was
Yeah.
anyway, he was a wonderful person. But anyway, you mentioned Brandon.
Oh yeah, no, Brandon, and you have Wesley Snipes, you have Robert Patrick, Heather Graham, Steven Seagal, and it seems like you really,
From
really
things
like.
I've heard, I feel a lot of the movie star BS probably might come from Steven Seagal. Am I wrong?
Well, I do have two good Steven Seagal
Let's
stories.
hear it. Let's hear it.
No, you
But-
can't give it away. You can't go. Okay,
Yeah.
wait. Can you
Give
give us a
us
little
one.
teaser?
I'll
Is
give
it
you-
as tasty as we all think?
There's two really tasty ones, but there's one caveat, and that is that Steven, and he fought for me to direct Mark for Death.
Really? Wow.
He had gone to Warner Brothers to make a movie called Hard to Kill. And he liked me from Halloween. He had seen Halloween 4, and he said to Warner's, I want this guy to do Hard to Kill. And Warner Brothers said, you're smoking crack, you're high. We're not giving this studio movie to this guy. So they assigned him another director. It didn't really go well. The movie did end up making a lot of money, but Steven wasn't happy with the movie. So in the meantime, I went off and made Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund.
Yes.
I came back, and he was going on to make another movie for another studio. And he called me again, and I went in to do Mark for Death. So he wasn't at war with me the way he is with quite a few directors, because he's very combative, as you can imagine. But he wasn't really out to sabotage me.
Okay.
Because frankly, it wasn't in his interest to sabotage me, because he had been pushing me to the studio. I mean, not that we didn't have our conflict, but I'll tell you a funny little story. We were out one night in an alley at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get a shot. Of course, you probably know Mark for Death, but
I love that movie. Yeah, my second favorite of his.
Yeah, it's really good. Where he had to say one thought he was invincible, the other thought he could fly. They were both wrong, And so at the end of the alley, it was near a restaurant, and there's this pile of garbage. And we're all tired and cold, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're setting up lights. And there were all these rats scurrying in and out of the restaurant garbage. And Steven came out of his SUV or whatever he was keeping warm in, and he came out with this ginormous pellet gun. I don't know, maybe it was a 22. I don't know what the hell it was. But he came out and he pointed way down the alley and started picking off rats.
What?
And what's insane is he never freaking missed.
Whoa.
It was like, we're all watching, the ADs are freaking out. Like, Steve, you can't do that. Dude, we have cops here, we have police, you can't be shooting weapons, you can't be having, now, things were different in those days.
Yeah.
The world wasn't as paranoid as it is now.
Yeah.
But what the funny part of the story, because the first time I ever met him, I walked into his office and he was behind his desk and he was speaking fluent Japanese on the phone. And so I came into the office and I thought, no, wait a minute. This can't all be bullshit about him, because who speaks fluent Japanese, right?
Yeah.
What white guy from Michigan speaks fluent Japanese? And he did. So, and then you see him do this marksmanship. It was crazy. So Steven is, for whatever we think of his backstory or his press clippings, he is trained. He is an Aikido master.
He is legit.
Yeah, he is a major marksman. He does speak fluent Japanese. He's quite an interesting guy. And I would, there are some good stories in there, but I have nothing really but good things to say about Stephen, because he kind of stuck his neck out for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
with the book, what made you decide to write it? Because it
Oh,
sounds
yeah.
like the kind of book I would have loved when I was in film school, write what Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez.
Right. And I worked with Robert, and yeah, a perfect example. So I was invited to UCLA to speak to to give a little seminar to a film class, and as a friend, a favor to a friend. And there's like about this fairly large lecture hall at UCLA, and there's about 200 people out there, and I was talking different things about filmmaking. There's just a million questions, and the class was over in 45, 50 minutes, and I thought to myself, we didn't even get started, and these young filmmakers seem so interested, and so eager to hear all this. So I thought, so that was the seed of it. I thought, I should write all this down, because just as you said, there may be not just film fans, but young filmmakers who could really get something from this. So that was part of it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome, because I'm always looking for, director biographies, because I don't just watch the movies. I like studying everything about what was going on with the filmmaker at that time, and, the writer, the experience on set. Because I'll say it, I learned more from DVD commentaries than
Oh
I
my
did in film school.
DVD commentaries were a real thing. I mean, they really opened up a lot of ideas for people. But I do think this book really can be helpful for interested people, and also people who are just fans too. You don't have to be a film student, just
Yeah.
fans.
It kind of hits people two ways, because you have obviously the filmmaker who's actively looking and searching what is it like to be on a film set with more than two people, two
Yeah.
crew and two actors, right? um and then also, I mean, to hear all the stories that you have
But
from.
I do try and make an important example,
Mhm.
because since I went to film school has been normalized, right? There's Emerson, there's NYU, there's Loyola, UCLA, AFI. I can go on.
Right.
There may be 30 to 50 top tier ones, and then there's another 30 to 50 under those that are pretty good film schools.
Yeah.
But it's not dentistry, it's not law, it's not medicine. In other words, you don't go to film school, come out with a degree, and then apply online with your resume to open director assignments. There is no job. And it has to be very clear that this is not something where you study it in school and then you start as a law clerk and then work your way up and you get your law degree and you become partner, first adjunct and then partner. There's no ladder. There's no ladder to success. It is, and I talk about this in the book, it's the circus. And you join it, and it travels around a lot. And sometimes you're shoveling elephant shit, and other times you're the ringmaster.
Exactly.
And it's not a journey where you can just expect a certain beginning and a certain end. And I do try and make that clear in the book, that you've got to have, there's good luck and bad luck. There's timing and unfortunate events. There's a lot of things that go into it. So if you're on a set with a crew of 250 and you're dealing with a movie star and you're dealing with a massive logistical operation, that's the good news. That means you've made it that far, right? So this is all good. If you just if you would just want to kill yourself because you can't take the pressure anymore, that's the good news.
Exactly.
Because a lot of days you're in your house waiting for the phone to ring, which it won't.
Yeah.
Because you have to hustle it and you have to get your next film. And even the only time the phone will ring is after a hit. That's the only time.
Mm-hmm.
And so at Halloween 4, the phone rang. Marked for Death, the phone rang. And then after that, it's just, you just got to hustle, because the world it's like they say about really pretty girls, they go to a party different than we all do.
Yeah.
Just have to get there and stand near the window and let the world come to them.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're a pretty girl, you don't hustle.
Right.
Yeah.
You're playing Aikido all the time. You're just
That's
deflecting.
funny. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And if you've made a hit movie, you're the pretty girl for a minute. But if your next one bombs, you're right back where you started. And so in that sense, it's a very, you can't expect, you're not going to get red carpet and Golden Globes just because you hope to.
Exactly.
Yeah,
One thing
yeah.
I always say is two things. Film school's great, but until they have a class called "What do you do when your actress shows up to set, but her mom forgot to bring all of her wardrobe for that
Right.
day, so you have to change everything to the stuff where she's sitting in bed with the blankets covering her."
Right.
When film school offers that, then it's a must. And also, no one's ever gonna ask to see your grades. No producer in the world is gonna go, "Hey, listen, your short is great, your script is good. We can do this Blumhouse style under 5 million, but what grade did you get in your directing class?"
Yeah, at Emerson.
Exactly. Yeah, no one's gonna care about.
No, and that's okay, because it is a great medium, film and television. I like film better, but it is important for people to know, oh, do I want to be a doctor or a movie director? It's it's not really, that's not really the decision, because if there's something you can do, this is an old saying, but it's true, that if there's something you can do other than show business, do that.
Yeah.
Because you're going, if you just absolutely have to do this and live in a rent controlled apartment somewhere,
Right.
then I just think it's, the film school thing has been kind of oversold to parents particularly.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
When I was teaching acting in LA, I actually went to a convention, right? A comic convention, to add to what you're saying about the frustration of it all. And went up to, should I say it, Ryan O'Neal.
I worked
And
with Ryan.
you did?
Really?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Oh,
There's stories in the book about Ryan. But anyway.
Awesome.
Well, maybe this story isn't in this one will be in my book. It's a very short chapter.
Um,
I went up and I said, "Hi, Mr. O'Neal, how are you?" And he was like, "Yeah, okay." I was like, "Would you how would you feel? Would you be willing to come and talk to acting students about the business of acting and how to get into it?" And he looked at me, he looked at the guy he was sitting with, he
Right.
looked at me, he looked at him, he looked back at me, he goes, "What's the point? Honestly, what's the point?" And at that time I was thinking, you're absolutely right, but in my mind it's like, don't kill the dream, dude.
Yeah, but
It is.
you can understand how he can get there,
Yeah.
right? After everything that he's been through.
Yeah.
So I have a funny Ryan O'Neal story. So I
Let's
get the
hear it.
call. I get the call from the AD. I'm on Bones. I'm shooting Bones, and he's playing Emily Deschanel's dad. I hadn't met him yet, and the AD comes to me and says, "Ryan O'Neal wants to see you in his trailer." I'm like, "Okay, how's this going to go?" So I go, and he's got a security guy out front, and he goes, "Go on in." And so I'm coming up into the double wide, and I hear from around the corner, the first thing I hear is, "I hate directors." That's what it is.
Whoa.
So it's like, okay, that's a shot across the bow.
Right.
So I walk in, I say, "Yeah, hey, I'm doing this episode. I'm looking forward to it. How can I help?" And he said, how long is this going to fucking take? That's how you can help. So I thought, okay, so he's the cranky old Irishman. That's now established.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, here's the thing, Ryan. And I just decided to go for it. I said, Ryan, here's the thing. I have a shot. It starts out in the street on the lot at Fox, and we come down on the crane. And I go through the window of the restaurant until I find a waiter with a tray. And I follow the waiter and the tray through the crowd, and I get to the bar. And I wrap around the bar, and I push in to a close-up of you sitting at the end of the bar. And he looks at me like he's a boxer, you know. So he looks at me. I swear to God, I thought he was going to take a swing. And then I just gave him this big, like, smile. And he knows he's been had, right? And he says, "You fucker." Because I was like, don't worry about it. I'll get you out of here as fast as I can. But I decided, you know what? Let's not play what a hard ass you are. Let's just be two people and relax. And then the other thing I said to him was, which was I thought interesting, was I said, just before I go, I want to ask you a question. And he said, what? You know, kind of defensive. I said, when you were making Barry Lyndon and you and your regiment was coming up the field and you broke off with your uncle and your uncle's dying, and when you kissed your uncle on the forehead, I said, was that kiss on the forehead before he dies, was that your idea or was that Stanley's idea? So he's standing there like, this guy is like a nerd. He is a film nerd. And he knows shit about what he's talking about, right? And so he stopped for a minute. He goes, that was my idea. Like all of a sudden, that was my idea. And I pitched it to Stanley, and Stanley said, try it. And I tried it. And then he ended up keeping it. And he's like, his eyes light up like he's awesome. A little boy, right? Because now what's he talking about? He's talking about the finest moment in the finest film of his career.
Yeah.
He's talking about Stanley Kubrick and Barry Lyndon. He's not talking about this Bones episode.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm acknowledging to him, I know who you are. Right? You're not the guest star on a TV show. I know who you are. You're like an iconic movie star.
Yeah.
Who did one of Stanley Kubrick's great movies. So this all goes to show you gotta work with people, right? You gotta find out who they are and play to that. Sorry, that's long-winded, but
oh
no, this is amazing.
Did you guys know that Barry Lyndon is connected to Stanley Kubrick faking the moon landing?
I don't know
the lens, because you know there's that whole like conspiracy theory the lenses they used on Barry Lyndon for the cameras are the same ones NASA had for the moon landing. So the goes that the way they got him to fake the moon landing was saying you could use these lenses on your next movie.
That's
and then the one. Shining stuff comes in.
Yeah, around Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, well, first of all, he's a very reclusive person, so you can build conspiracies around him, right? Because he made himself almost Salinger-esque.
I was about to say that,
So then the mysteries grow.
Wow.
So if I don't ask about, you know what I'm going to ask about now, because this is when the, major motion pictures started with you, was what Halloween 4. Talk about the pressure coming in, because now Season of the Witch is looked upon fondly, but when it came out, because there was no Michael Myers, so this one, right in the title, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Well, that was Mustafa. He knew. He knew that they had messed up. And he, I think, I don't know John Carpenter, just full disclosure, but he had wanted to do these anthology things. And he wanted to carry on Halloween. But Mustafa knew that Halloween without Michael was not working and was not going to work. And so the common wisdom was, well, he's dead. We blew him up. in two, what are we going to do? And Pleasance is all blown up, and what are we going to do? And so Alan and I went in and basically pitched him this idea of 10 years later, and he's in the hospice of this, prison, and he's scarred. He's been in a coma all this time. And so we just came up with some way to literally resurrect Michael. So that was step one, was how do you resurrect Michael? But Mustafa Khad, who was the sort of the financier,
The
godfather,
godfather, grandfather
right,
of Michael
this whole thing.
Myers.
And by the way, a very talented filmmaker in his own right. Yeah, he had done Lion in the Desert and all those big Anthony Quinn movies. But anyway, so that was job one. Job two is, how do you make it without Jamie Lee Curtis? How do you get the babysitter back?
Yeah.
And then we came up with this combo, Alan and I, this combo idea of the little Jamie Lloyd and her older foster sister, played by Ellie Cornell. So between the two of them, we felt like we had the heartbeat of Jamie Lee Curtis, between the two sisters. And then, of course, we slowly brought Michael back. And that was the key to it. And I did kind of try and shoot it not aping the style of one, but I tried to be respectful of the style of Halloween 1.
And the big thing, like I was saying before the show, 1 and 2 are great. They're, everything I love is based upon the solid foundation, but they didn't feel like Halloween. They could have been set on Arbor Day and they would have still been great. But with part 4, this, Larry was mentioning this, I'll let you say it. The second it starts, you could be living in Hawaii and you watch that opening,
right,
and it's like, man, it's fall. I'm in the
Right.
Midwest.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And we just took you there.
Yeah.
My DP was a friend of mine from Cleveland, and we drove outside of Salt Lake City to these old fields, and just literally stole shit. Some of it we had art department, like we put a straw man in a tractor.
Yeah.
It was like we found this found art.
Right.
Part of it was I was unclear in my mind about some of the origins of Halloween. I mean, I had been in it my whole life, trick-or-treating and all that. But when you dig into the pagan agricultural ritual of it and the Celtic Irish thing, it's about the death of all the crops, right? It's the onset of winter, it's the death of everything, and so there's this like terror of you're going into the heart of darkness of winter. And so it has this root in ancient agrarian farm culture. And so I started to think, well, wait a minute, we should be in fields. We should be in fallow fields, and we should have old scarecrows barely hanging on. So we were trying to conjure up some, because I wasn't going to do just the, although I love it, but the jack-o'-lantern title from Halloween.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just do that again.
Yeah.
So that's where some of that opening came up with, but it does set the tone for sure.
And I watched it last night, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna take a picture of Dwight's name. Right. and it's something where it's very, now that you're talking about it, it's very subconscious when you're watching it, and it feels a little cold. It feels a little off somehow. It feels a little, I guess, Halloweeny.
Right.
And I did say, like before we even got you on, that just watching it and going to bed and waking up, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it's Halloween already. And it puts you in that mood. And granted, it's like 95 degrees here in Texas, but it still puts you in that place of of storytelling and movie making. And Dwight, I think, I mean, just talking to you and listening to your stories and meeting you, I can tell. And it always, a good worker in the entertainment industry always works. And I think there's a very big reason why you have had a 20-30 year career,
More,
almost
more.
40.
I'm at 40.
See, Eric was like, man, he did a lot of movies. And I said, oh, yeah. And he did a lot more TV too. I can't even count that high. You've got such a long list.
Because I did a documentary, it was actually more than that. But I did an after school special kind of thing.
I used to love those so much. I miss
and
them.
that was in 81. So you can imagine now I'm past 40 years. It's been
Wow.
and I've been pretty steady. I've been working pretty steady. There have been a couple lulls, but look, TV saves me. And I don't want to make light of that, because the old 3 strikes rule, where a director, after you've had a hit, you're allowed 3 at-bats. This is the general rule. Now, this is not written down anywhere. It's just what it is, right?
Right.
So Mark for Death, #1, 3 weekends in a row, cleans up, makes boatloads of money. I didn't get the money, but it made boatloads of money. So then Fox comes to me and we say, we want to do something with this kid, Brandon Lee. We feel like he's the real deal. Obviously, it doesn't hurt. His pedigree is unmistakable. And I thought this was a fresh way to do an action movie, because they had been pitching me, Van Damme, of course, and who's the great French actor from Highlander?
It's on the tip of my tongue. I know who you're talking
Lambert,
about.
Christophe
Yeah.
Lambert. They were pitching him, and Norris. There was a whole bunch of those guys then, and I didn't want to just do that again. But Brandon seemed fresh to me. Anyway, we made Rapid Fire. It came out great. It flopped. The reason it flopped is in the book. It had to do with a weird political thing, but it did flop. So now I'm like, okay, I'm kind of struggling now, because the fresh paint of Mark for Death is off me now. So then I made this weird pivot to do a family film, because I thought that will reinvigorate me, give me a different identity. How I got Free Willy 2 is also in the book, but I did manage to get Free Willy 2. Studio loved it, the producers loved it, everybody loved it, and it flopped. It really flopped. Partly because of the Michael Jackson problem, and partly because the whale was still in the tank problem. So now I'm in trouble. So now I've had 2 swings and misses. So now Warner Brothers comes to me, because they were happy with the movie, and I got Murder at 1600. So I make Murder at 1600. It tests through the roof. The studio loves it. The producers loved it. This was Arnold Kolpison, a big time producer. The Fugitive, Platoon.
Yeah.
Just the top of the food chain. Murder 1600 flops. So now that's 3 strikes, right? And now they're like, we love Dwight, but his last 3 pictures bombed. So now you're in trouble. And now, like, what do you do? And that's when there was this little window open to me for television. And someone said, come up to Vancouver and do an episode of Millennium. And I loved Chris Carter and I loved Lance Hendrickson. So off I went. Once I did that, I was on, there was no turning back.
Yeah.
So TV kind of honestly saved my ass, to tell you the
I
truth.
just wanted to ask, this is right when shooting in Vancouver for a TV show was just starting, right? Because I think X-Files was shooting there, and even till now, all the big shows are shot in Vancouver. Plays everybody but Vancouver in movies.
It's always Seattle or Portland or whatever. But don't forget that Stephen J. Cannell had been there before. You're right. There was a huge rush to Vancouver around that time. But if you look up his credits, he did 21 Jump Street up there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he did a bunch of fairly big network shows. His name was Stephen J. Cannell. He was huge TV producer.
Yeah.
And he liked to shoot up there, but it really didn't catch on. And I mean, X-Files broke it wide open.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Lance?
Yeah.
Well, Lance has an interesting story that he came up so rough that he never really he'll talk about this. He never really learned to read very well.
He was illiterate in his adult years.
Well, so he joined the service and because he didn't know what else to do, and he had kind of a knockaround life. And then he got interested in the theater, and he had to learn to compensate, by listening to recordings and memorizing dialogue. I mean, he did later get, obviously start to learn to read, but it was always a bit of a struggle. And he's a wonderful person, but I often found you had to kind of fit with the way he could learn dialogue was a little different than with other people. You can't just throw him a new page of dialogue and he's going to just ingest it immediately. He took the time, he had to kind of learn it. But he's a very particular person. He takes great pride in what he does, very detail oriented, but has a big heart and a good guy.
Man, that's amazing.
And such a great bad guy in movies. Like, if you want to see a great bad guy, watch the movie Stone Cold.
Okay.
Oh, such a good movie.
Wasn't that the wrestler or the...
No, this is the guy who was the football player.
Yeah, I guess what I mean, not wrestler, football player.
Yeah. Well, then Steve Austin used the name Stone Cold later on, but that was a great movie. Everybody should see that.
Okay, well, I feel like I know it, but I don't know it somehow.
Hey,
so now,
wait, actually, really quick, Eric, Dwight, and I know, didn't mention this, but would you like to read just a little piece from your book? And I know I'm just throwing this at you right now.
Sure, I can find some. Keep asking me questions and I'll...
Okay. Actually, here's an odd thing, and this is very
I have
odd.
one I've been waiting to ask after you.
Okay, well, just an observation. I always get Scott Glenn and Lance Henriksen mixed up. I do. I was like, man, that's that guy from Urban Cowboy. Urban Cowboy. Just a thing,
Scott Glenn, I believe he's very old, but he worked up until not too long ago. He's the bad guy from Urban Cowboy.
Yeah.
He's also from The Right Stuff, right?
Yeah. These are all, all these people that it's kind of weird because everybody that, we kind of grew up in the 80s is getting like, older. And it's a weird thing to see because now looking back, now I see what people were saying when they saw Marlon Brando get older.
But let's say it, they're not getting older. People are dying. I mean, we just lost William Friedkin.
Yeah.
And the great Jimmy Buffett just died.
Yeah.
I feel like, every time I turn on my computer, it's somebody. So it's a bit rough because those people who were 70s, and early 80s icon. I mean, but look at Pacino and De Niro, they're like 80 or beyond.
Pacino just had a kid.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
It's hard when you see your heroes kind of, get older. And
I saw a picture of Schwarzenegger getting out of the car on something. Oh boy, it's because my stepson worked with him on Escape Plan.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, he's all very when he's properly filmed and they do the right shots and makeup, he presents pretty well.
Yeah.
But when you see like an unguarded moment, right? You see just the body is just efforting.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
time, man. No one beats it.
Yeah.
I know. That's the it still freaks me out every time I see Elf every Christmas and I see a picture. And I'm like, how could this be? How are all these people older than what I see on TV?
How
It's
can
You
you-
want-
crazy.
Remember
Okay.
in Top Gun 2, the kid from Jerry Maguire looks way older than Tom Cruise. But have you found a section
Yes.
from the book?
Oh, well, I mean, we were talking about Millennium, and I opened the book randomly,
Oh.
and there's just some little thing here, and it says Millennium was about the real and imagined coming of what was then known and feared as Y2K, year 2000. In the Christian calendar, the end of the second millennium marks the judgment day and the second coming of Christ. According to the Bible, Christ was to come back after 2,000 years and pass judgment on people, both living and dead. Needless to say, there was a lot of real unease about the impending arrival of this symbolic date. The fulfillment of Christian prophecy lined up with a so-called computer glitch, which was going to bring down banks, shut down the power grids, disrupt the food supply, and cause the general overall collapse of society. Planes were going to fall out of the skies because of the impending programming disaster when 1999 became 2000. Some people would be snatched and taken up to heaven, some would be sent to hell or left behind, and these events were described in scripture as the rapture. I was shooting a scene with the great Terry O'Quinn, who went on to fame in the TV show Lost. Terry's character was sitting in front of a fire and explaining winter solstice, the origins of the Christian calendar, and the second coming to Lance and the rest of the Millennium cast. This was all part of the story and written as dialogue. I was very taken with the scene because I thought we were really digging into the emotions and questions that so many people were feeling at that time. I moved the camera very slowly across Terry's face and then moved on to show the rest of the actors absorbed in what Terry was saying. I had the lighting team create a convincing firelight effect so that the movement of the flames would reflect in each actor's eyes. And finally, I pushed into a slow close-up of Lance listening to these words as if his life depended on it. And in the story, it did. There's
Wow,
Wow.
that's
Holy
awesome.
crap.
So
I could
where
just go ahead. Go ahead.
Larry.
Oh
I
no,
mean, I could go on, but that's enough. But
okay. Admittedly, I'm a visual when I read, I'm a visual person. So even when you were talking to Ryan O'Neal in his trailer and you brought the crane down and even doing the movement for the camera during what you were just reading, I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. That's amazing. It's amazing. I love that.
So where is the book available?
well, right now it's they just sent a new shipment over. It should be 2 days ago. It was showing only one left. I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing, but it should be fully stocked this week. So it's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think those other ones book. It's online. The answer is it's online.
We'll I'm sure we'll grab a couple of links and put them in the
Oh, links will be
description.
in the description for sure.
Yeah. Man,
You can
I tell
also,
you.
you can also,
Well,
I'm sorry, you can get it from McFarland Press is the publisher, and you can get it through them as well.
Okay.
Okay. I tell you, Dwight, you have been so nice to us.
Yeah, it's
Letting us ask all kinds of questions.
It's all good.
and hey, I'm proud of myself for not only asking Halloween 4 questions.
Now
I-
we've broadened your palette.
yeah,
right.
I mean, I was a
That's right.
fan of your other work, but man, like all I wanted to talk about was that. But you're such an engaging storyteller.
Yeah.
But do you
it
want to
just-
talk about the mask? Do you want to ask me?
Oh, I wanted to ask about the Man in Black.
Wait. The mask story I can tell. Let me tell that one.
Okay,
first.
let's hear it.
So Alan and I had this idea that we wanted to make Michael's return organic, right? So he's wrapped in all kinds of gauze in the hospital thing, and then he breaks out of the ambulance with that great thumb to the forehead bit.
Oh, I gotta tell you, in my first feature, we couldn't afford to do it, but I wrote a scene that was like an homage to the
Oh,
ambient light
nice.
scene.
Nice.
Yes.
And so then he has to go to the gas station and kill the mechanic to get the overalls, right? We had to build
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So then we had to go to basically what was a drugstore and get a commercial mask that was for sale. And then that's where Jamie gets her clown outfit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there was like they were having Michael Myers as like a town because it had been 10 years ago. And so you see Michael take the mask from the drugstore. And so the mask from the beginning was kind of plain because it wasn't a Hollywood designed mask.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like a commercial, like you'd find it, you know, Target or CVS or something. It was a commercial mask. So then the producers were looking at dailies and they were like, oh, there's something, it doesn't quite sit right. So they took that mask and then they started to adjust it and dirty it down and give it a little more character. And so then we went with that for a while. And then there is literally a mistake in the school at the end where we couldn't, I think it was, we couldn't find the mask. It was lost or misplaced or whatever. And the prop guy had a backup mask on the prop truck. The sun was coming up. We had to shoot, and it had this weird blonde hair. And so I guess we all talked ourselves into the fact that the shot was going to be so quick that we would get away with it. But what's weird about that mask is not that the mask is weird, which it is, but there's this this weird blonde hair.
Yeah.
And that is sort of, so the story of the mask is we never just got to design a Michael Myers mask. It came out of a organic story idea.
That's great. So
yeah,
I gotta know,
yeah.
was all the Lincoln stuff up there? No, it couldn't have been up there already. You guys put that there to make it feel like it was Illinois?
Yeah, in the diner, we put all that in there. And basically, and all, by the way, Universal Studios, not a couple of years ago, 2 years in a row, they had a Halloween 4
Yeah.
a thing at Universal Studios, and they did that diner, and they did a great job with the Lincoln stuff. But yeah, that was all the art department did that.
That's
amazing.
so
That's
amazing. Well,
And-
again, I'm gonna hold myself back from asking more questions.
Okay.
And again, when everybody goes back to watch Halloween 4 and they're in the school, is that the one where he was at the top of the stairs and she looks up and screams?
No, it was more
Is
in
that
the
the shot?
hallway. He throws, he doesn't he throw Donald through a door or through.
Oh, yes, he does. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's that shot.
Oh, okay.
It's that shot where the mask is all messed up. I think by the time we got him at the top of the stairs, I think we were okay again, as I remember. But there was, listen, people aren't wrong. There were some mask problems.
So do you get a lot of people? I don't know if you go to conventions that much. Do you get a lot of blonde Michael Myers masks to sign?
It's funny. I've only been to one. I went to I think it was a 30-year
The
Halloween.
classic DVD that came out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was over in Pasadena, and a lot of people wanted to sign. Some people brought masks, posters. Everybody had memorabilia. It was cool. But I think if there's a 35th Halloween convention, I might go to that, but I haven't done a lot of that up to this point, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Well,
I tell you.
we don't want to take all of your time. We could stay talking
know.
for
No,
hours.
I know.
Yeah, I'm ready to wrap up, but you guys tell me if is there any last thought you want to pursue or.
Yes, actually, and based on what you had said before is since filmmakers and creatives, they really sometimes don't know where to start. They know what they want to do. They know where they kind of want to be and what that kind of looks like. But what advice, and I think I kind of know, but what advice would you tell somebody that goes, I want to do this. How should I start to do it?
Well, the answer is lame. So if you want to act, do community theater, do off whatever, do student films if you can, try to do, get into groups of young filmmakers so you can get in their movies in case one of those shorts pops and becomes something. If you're looking to direct, like we were just saying, shoot it, cut it, do the sound, do the music, finish it, get on Film Freeway. You guys know about Film Freeway?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We had our horror film festival, and we put stuff on there to accept films. Yeah.
Great. And see if you get any traction somewhere.
yeah.
Get it out there. It's a couple $100. And then if you messed it up, make another one. Don't be shy. Now, there's two things you have to have if you're going to direct. You gotta have a good script, and you have to have a good cast. If you don't have those two things, don't spend the money or the time. Don't do it. Just don't do it. That is my advice, because I don't care if you're Martin Scorsese. Without a script and a cast, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So you have to have, if you know a great actor who's a friend or your uncle or your in-law, but is a really good actor, write a script around them. But don't make something with a bad actor. And there's mostly, no offense to all of our SAG friends, but there's a lot of bad actors.
Oh yeah.
And you can't shoot your way out of trouble.
Yeah.
You just can't. And then the other thing is, you've got to have a story worth telling. And forget if it's a tone poem or if it's a slice of life or if it's an art film, forget all that. What's the story, and is the story worth telling? Even if it's 12 minutes or 20 minutes, what's the story? This is what I always come back to with young filmmakers. I don't care that you're doing an interesting study of the autumnal fields of the Norwegian landscape. I don't care. What's the story? And there's a guy, and he what?
Yeah.
Right.
Or there's a girl, and when we meet her, she's almost drowned at the edge of a lake. Why? It's like, it's all narrative. Yeah. It's all narrative. So I'll leave with that thought. Just, you gotta be relentless about your actor and your script.
Wow.
Yeah.
And again, that is the perfect way to end it. And I want to add to that, your story is the most important thing. If you're a musician and you're writing a song, no one cares about your guitar solo except for guitar nerds. Write a good chorus. That's all that matters. And again, in movies, story trumps all. We're seeing it now where big multi-million-dollar movies are flopping because there's no story, but then these smaller movies are doing great because it's jam-packed with story and character. Dwight, we thank you again for coming on the show and letting us annoy you with our countless questions about stuff you've worked on. Again, all the links to where you can purchase the book will be in the description if you're listening in on Anchor. And when the show goes up, we will definitely tag where you can purchase everything. Dwight, thank you again for coming on. And hey, everyone, we're doing this episode on 9/12. So remember, support our troops, support our first responders. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.